Netanyahu decided to drop by Patrick Bet-David's show, of course.
And so tell us about who's Patrick Bet-David? Like, what's his?
Don't ask me.
What's his place in this ecosystem? Do we know?
I mean, maybe you could lump him in with the like podcast bro category if people
big
are.
In that. Yeah.
He's definitely bro-coded. He has like very lively conversations on his channel.
What's Netanyahu doing? Like Nelk Boys and now this, and then they brought these weird influencers over to like take video.
Oh yeah,
from the
PragerU influencer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly what Netanyahu, like just from a cynical perspective. I think the Nelk Boys decision, as unserious as we all know it is, and as cynical as we all know it is, that is exactly what you would want to do if you are trying to prevent losing young right-wing men to the anti-Israel movement. That's like actually exactly what you would want to do. And you would also want to go on Patrick Bet-David's show if that's what you're trying to do. So I think strategically it's like pretty clever. How do we think it went for him? Let's take a look.
Israel owns America. You know, Israel is who makes America do things they want them to do, whether it's through AIPAC, you know, whether it's through, you know, funding, money. You'll typically hear this. This has been overly said the last couple of years in a major way. And there's a community of Americans that at this point believe that whatever Israel wants, they make a phone call to America. America better do or else. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. I think it's full of hokum. First of all, do you know President Trump? I mean, sort of, I've known him for many years.
Sure.
Okay. You don't make him do anything. He does what he thinks is in America's interest. I don't know. It's a good question, but you said something about Biden that I should just point out the facts. In fact, President Biden supported us in the beginning of the war after this horrific massacre, and he came here, and I very much appreciate it. But as the war progressed and the vilifications of Israel, the distortions on the media began to pile on, you know, he began to take a different course. And when we were just 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way in Gaza, I said we have to go into that last position that they had, where they had organized battalions. It's in a city called Rafah, in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. And he said, don't go there. And he said, if you do go there, I'll smack an embargo on you. Now, you know, you're fighting a 7-front war, and all of a sudden you're slapped with an embargo.
What do you think, Ryan?
So Biden did say publicly, repeatedly, and Miller and others, Matt Miller and others, State Department spokesperson, said Rafah is a red line. Mm-hmm. That for many reasons, it was U.S. policy was that Rafah is a red line. You do not go into Rafah. Now, for the first time, we have Netanyahu's claim of what Biden was willing to say to back up this red line. Mm-hmm. There will be an embargo. I assume he means arms embargo, not massive, not the mass starvation of Israel. That's barbaric. Nobody should do that. Clearly, he did not do that. Netanyahu called his bluff. Whether we know he made a bluff of some sort because he publicly said it's a red line. So strategically, it seems like what Netanyahu's doing there is trying to say, I'm with Trump, Biden is with Hamas. And so if you, Patrick Bet-David, viewer, are with Trump, then you're with me.
Yes, he's tying himself to Trump.
Yeah,
right.
And further creating adversaries out of Democrats. Mm-hmm. Like he's which
very
is amazing.
clever.
We just talked about AIPAC Shakur, and you know the Democratic establishment support of Israel remains like rock solid.
Yeah.
Netanyahu's adversarial relationship to the Democratic Party is remains very strong. It's this one-way support.
Yep. That's a really interesting point, because I was going to say, I mean, Netanyahu can be credited with solidifying the Republican Party's magnetic like relationship with Israel. It was not always like that. If you go back to the Reagan administration, there's a lot of support for Israel, but there's not this deference, this reflexive deference to Israel, which is actually really just the reflexive deference to Likud. And that's Netanyahu. Netanyahu has led the way on that point. And it's been, whatever you say about Netanyahu, and you could say a lot of things about Netanyahu, that has been politically, cynically, a calculation that paid off for him. And I think that's what you're seeing in the Patrick Bet-David interviews. He's continuing to try to make that point, that he is that Israel is the renegade actor, that is the maverick actor. That is the, if you're an American who wants to see the sort of global elite busted up, you're supporting Israel in this situation against the rest of the world. And the evil forces of the rest of the world, the Islamists that want to take down America for American freedom and all of that. He's trying the same line out, and it's probably the best he's got. I mean, unfortunately for him, it's probably the best he's got at this point.
And while this is going on, the news out of Gaza is that Israel's incursion into Gaza City is continuing. And the reporting that we're getting from the ground there is that it's horrific beyond even the description of what we've seen before. Previously, when cities have been taken by the IDF and destroyed, first they would take the city, they'd be completely depopulated, and then they would send in these combat engineering units that would then detonate block by house, block by block, until cities at complete rubble, which has now been done to Rafah. That's not what they're doing this time. This time, they are sending in bomb-laden robots into populated city blocks and setting the explosives off, and to the point where you can see the explosions from like miles away. You had this like IDF-linked Mossad, it's called Mossad OSINT account, saying that actually that Hamas was doing this. It's like Hamas doesn't have robots, first of all. Hamas doesn't have explosives with charges like that. And also, why would Hamas be blowing up like city blocks filled with people? And so they're sending in these robots, basically, suicide bombers, except they're robots rather than people. And then, and then moving in and then clearing, and then proceeding apace. You've got close to 1 million people affected by this in and around the Gaza City area, who are now being pushed further west. They're very nervous about going south. They're telling us because if they know, or they believe that if they go south, like that's it. Like that, Gaza City's over. It'll be completely flattened, completely destroyed. Saying there's very little Hamas resistance in these areas, because what are you going to do? Like just these robotic bomb-laden monsters are rolling in and they're just blowing up. Like there's nothing you can really do as a resistance force against something like that. Now this is happening in the context of the assassinations of all of the journalists who, not all of them, there's many are still working, but many of the most prominent journalists in Gaza City were killed over the last several weeks. Khan Yunis, we had 5 more journalists killed the other day, including a 6th in his tent later, an investigative journalist, in a separate attack. So fallout from that attack continues. And we'll move to that next, because we're learning 2 just absolutely unbelievable details about this, and I think people need to retain their ability to be shocked by this, because if you're not, then you're losing the moral core, your moral core, and people want you to become numb to this stuff. And when things that shock the conscience happen, we should still acknowledge that they're shocking. So it goes back to this. We could play C6 here. This is a strike that probably everybody has seen by now. That's the second hit on the double tap.
Nasser Hospital.
And so they struck the hospital at 10 a.m. And then at 10:17, as you can see in the bottom corner there, it says Quds 10:17. Al-Quds is the Arabic name for Jerusalem. So 17 minutes after the first strike, there are first responders, medics, journalists, a medical student, a civil defense worker who rushed to the scene trying to save people who've been killed, which included the Reuters cameraman, because they attacked this camera, which we'll talk about in a moment. 17 minutes later, they bomb it again to kill all of those people. So the IDF has now come out with its own explanation for what happened. We'll get into that in a second. What we're learning, though, is that the day before this happened, the international doctors working at Nasser Hospital were told that the next morning they would have to go to the WHO headquarters, which is 30 minutes away, for an in-person gender violence training. It's extremely unusual. Well, we'll talk about this in a second. But let's put up C7 here.
I was just listening to your reporter saying that Netanyahu says this is a tragic mishap. This is absolutely untrue. This is strategic and intentional. The foreign aid workers, the foreign doctors that are actually in the hospital were asked to leave before this airstrike. And so that is not a mishap. That is absolutely deliberate. This is not the first time Israel has struck a hospital.
Are you hearing from your contacts on the ground that foreign doctors working at Nasser Hospital were given the heads up to evacuate Nasser Hospital before a strike came?
Absolutely. They were told some arbitrary reason that they had to leave, and they weren't allowed to come back until the next day. So this is not an accident.
Now, to travel from Nasser Hospital and Khan Younis to the WHO, that travel would have to be coordinated with COGAT, which is the Israeli agency that makes sure that they know who's moving where. And if they see a convoy moving and it is an unapproved convoy, they will strike it with a drone. And so the hospitals always coordinate their movement. WHO coordinates its movement with Israel. At drop site, we confirmed directly with a person on the ground there that what Dr. Mimi Syed there said did in fact occur. Another interview was done by, I believe this is a nurse with Times of London. We can roll C8.
There are other NGOs that do enter the hospital that were also attending the mandatory meeting, but they don't sleep in the corridors.
Okay, so how many of there were you approximately at this mandatory training? And you've already said it's pretty unusual for you to have this sort of mandatory training.
Yeah, it was about 15 of us that were there.
And the training was in what, Amanda?
So the training was at the WHO house, and it was training for gender-based violence.
Was it strange to you, or is this normal to receive this type of training?
Yeah, in my prior times of volunteering internationally, we usually get all the information prior to our start. The fact that they're now introducing this gender-based violence lecture halfway through my rotation was also interesting, is they mandated that one of our other volunteers who's planning to exit tomorrow to also attend. So it was mandated for volunteers who really weren't going to have any physical interaction with patients. Also, the fact that we inquired about other ways to attend the lecture remotely, and it was completely turned down. I mean, so far, us as a group, our NGO, have discussed it amongst ourselves, and we're all in consensus that this was a fishing expedition. Like this didn't seem right. This didn't sit right with any of us in our gut. We knew something was not right. And so we inquired with our lead coordinator to investigate this with the WHO to give us more answers as to who ordered them to have us leave.
So at a bare minimum, we know that the Israeli military knew that all of the international doctors and nurses were out of Nasser Hospital when they attacked the hospital. That's at a minimum. The questions that remain to be answered are, who insisted to the WHO that these nurses and doctors go in person at this time? Why didn't they do this beforehand? Why did they have to do this in person? Like who made that demand? One of the internet, as she said, I don't know if she said it in this clip or not. One of the international doctors was leaving the next morning, or later that day or something.
Right.
So it's like, and tried to get out of it. Like, I don't need this gender-based training. Like, I'm leaving. And they're like, nope, you also must attend, every single person. Because if you're going to do a double tap strike in a hospital, you're going to kill a lot of medical staff. Because if you hit they hit the 4th floor right near the intensive care unit, and so one of the doctors who was killed is he's a resident. He was a 3rd-year medical student. He rushed to the scene. American, European, Malaysian, all these other doctors who were at Nasser Hospital would have rushed to the scene. It was a scene of terrible carnage, trying to treat people as quickly as possible. And then when you double tap it, you would have killed those Americans and Europeans and Malaysians or whoever else is there. So at a minimum, we know that was not a risk that they faced with this double tap strike.
So then also we have now C10. We can put on the screen. This was the headline in the New York Times just yesterday saying Israel says it attacked Gaza hospital to destroy camera placed by Hamas. And Ryan, you posted this by saying, compare this honest and impressive reporting from New York Times' Eric Toller and others with the headline that the New York Times put on his article, Absolute Night and Day. The journalists find the IDF flat out lied. The editors then write a headline that pretends the IDF claim is serious and includes their slanderous claim that 6 of those killed were militants. Right.
Yeah, and for context and credit there, we put up C11 as well. The first reporter to observe this, and Eric Toller in his thread credited Yunus Tarawi, who Dropsite contributor, who's done incredible work. He's the guy who is constantly doing investigations into the war crimes committed by Israeli forces using their own TikTok and Instagram and Facebook confessions that they post. What he observed is that on Channel 12, a right-wing OSINT enthusiast, as Yunus calls him here, these guys who go on Twitter and look at satellite images and say, oh, look what I found here.
Toller's a Bellingcat guy.
Yeah, Toller is a former Bellingcat guy who now does this exact thing, OSINT for the New York Times. You geolocate, you look at satellite image on this day, compare it to this day, and you can try to figure out what happened. It's very valuable.
It's an incredible skill if you're good at it.
Yeah, and incredibly dangerous if you're not. We reported earlier.
Oh yeah.
Remember that the U.S. used some OSINT advice from amateurs in Yemen and killed dozens of innocent people.
Yep.
So this guy, he claimed on Channel 12 to have identified a Hamas camera, and there are cranks all over Twitter and all over YouTube and everywhere else. It shouldn't be a crime to be a crank. But according to this crank, he was involved with the strike. He was online with them. He is now saying publicly to Israeli media that he was helping to guide the missile. And Israel is still saying it was the second shot was a tank shell. There are photos of a missile approaching the hospital, precision-guided missile, and that he was guiding it. He points to this white towel covering the camera, which is his evidence that it's a hidden camera. Use your brain for a second. A black camera sitting out in the sun is going to overheat. You put a white towel over it. If you're Hamas, is that how you hide a camera? By putting a white towel over it? The 4th floor of a hospital where all the media work? Now, what we also know is whose camera this was. This was a Reuters camera. So we can put up C12. So Reuters cameraman was killed immediately, and their camera was struck. And so the IDF then comes out and does not give any explanation for the second half of the double tap. But they say that their now official story is that they identified a, quote, Hamas camera and moved to eliminate it. If we can put up the Reuters headline. So the Reuters cameraman was killed in this attack on a Reuters camera. In the article itself, there's a picture of the Reuters camera that was destroyed with a LiveView backpack. A LiveView backpack is only used for broadcasting. You've probably used them maybe back way in the day. Like,
Yeah. You see them at any press event. Yeah.
right. It's for broadcasting. It is not for communication. It's not for secret communication with militants. You need like a broadcast license. You need to be working with a broadcaster, with like a YouTube channel or something.
Yeah, right. It's not just like a streaming kit.
Right, but it's not for communication one-to-one.
It's a broadcast, like literally the broadcast of the broadcast word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they have a picture in the Reuters article of the LiveView backpack that was hit by the shell. Reuters headline is, initial inquiry says Hamas camera was target of Israeli strike that killed journalists. And it says by Reuters. Interesting, there's no byline, which usually in a newsroom when there's no byline, whoever was forced to write the story refused to put their name on it. So they killed a Reuters cameraman and then said it was Hamas. They didn't even say he was Hamas. They said the camera was Hamas. And Reuters is willing to call itself Hamas because Israel says so, knowing full well that it was their camera and their cameraman that they attacked. Again, the headline, initial inquiry says Hamas camera was target of Israeli strike that killed journalists. And nowhere in the article do they even say that that's not true. What they do say is that their camera operator was killed and that their camera was hit. But they don't even connect the dots that that's the camera they're referring to.
Right.
I don't know what more capitulation you could have than to literally call yourself Hamas as Reuters. It's like and to do that in the wake of their colleague being killed, it's truly startling. A Reuters photographer resigned in protest over this. I saw yesterday or the day before. So, like I said, I think we need to maintain our capacity to be shocked by this stuff, because if this isn't shocking to us, then it just becomes normalized, and they won't even bother offering explanations.
Meanwhile, before he was going on the Patrick Bet David podcast, Netanyahu was posting C9, that Free Press video, discussing how they wrote the article. This is getting really meta, that Crystal and Sagar talked about yesterday, because they went after you, Crystal and Sagar, by name, and Glenn.
Did you feel left out?
Of course I felt left out. I mean, I like to be part of group activities, but they went after you guys for questioning the article, and then Netanyahu actually posted, in solidarity with the Free Press, basically, the video where they talked about the process of developing the article. Yeah,
he posted facts matter. And in one of the clips here, and this is the one we just had up there, Olivia Reingold is citing the case of Mossab al-Debs. Right. And this is what the Free Press itself put in their video. They write, or they quote, the 14-year-old boy was featured in the same CNN story as another child, quote, suffering from malnourishment, unquote, scare quotes. The original caption didn't mention that last May, he sustained a traumatic head injury amid what SHMS news agency, a Gaza-based outlet, called, quote, an Israeli shell explosion. So, according to the Free Press, CNN is being unfair to Israel because they said that a 14-year-old boy is suffering from malnourishment without in the caption mentioning that he'd also had part of his skull blown out by an Israeli shell. And Benjamin Netanyahu is so proud of this reporting from Olivia Reingold and the Free Press that he shared it with Facts Matter.
So in that editorial, one of the things the Free Press cited in defense of that article was that Washington Post, other outlets added corrections, which really weren't corrections so much as they were updates to the stories.
Update, the 14-year-old suffering from malnourishment also has a traumatic brain injury.
And that's
okay, thank you. That's useful information. That is fine.
Right, and that's where that's where it's like, yep, this is absolutely correct. That the context is important, and in some cases, the context is even more devastating to the narrative that, this is all okay, that this isn't, some deeply serious concern, because when you zoom into the context, you realize, oh, this kid had his head blown off.
Right.
Or you realize this is a condition because someone was malnourished in the womb. This is a condition because someone, nobody objects to the context. And I actually think that's the Washington Post and whoever else updating their story proves that nobody objects to the full context.
Right, and nobody would object to this reporting from the Free Press if they didn't follow it immediately with, Israel's opponents are saying that these are the average representatives of people in Gaza, and they're using them to tell you that there's a famine when in fact there is not a famine. There's suffering in Gaza, but there's no famine. So they're very clear about the purpose of their context that they're adding. They think that what they're doing is complicating the question and letting people know that actually it's not as bad as people want you to believe. That's what they're saying.
Right.
The context they're adding does not actually make their case. And so that's if they're actually genuinely curious about why people are objecting to their reporting, that's why. It's because their conclusion, which clearly they started with before they did the reporting, their conclusion is incorrect. Also, they keep citing cerebral palsy and all these other maladies that are not fatal in children. So the fact that they're dying with these pre-existing conditions is not the point that you think it is. The point is to treat these conditions, not to malnourish them such that they die with them, and then point to those conditions as some type of excuse for Israel to continue with its genocide.
Brian, you have some reporting to share on money and politics, so let's get to that.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free, and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.